Well, today is definitely a fun one on That's Classic. We have none other than a winner of 3 Emmys, Producers Guild Man of the Year. He's also been given the Directors Guild Award, and he is the creator of Laughin, which was an incredible show and still is an incredible show. So anyway, just an overall fun guy to have on the show, George Schlatter. George, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's just a thrill. I have to say, so right out of the gates,
Thrilled, but it's okay. What?
Right out of the gates, who came up with "Sock It to Me" and "Here Comes the Judge"? Where did that develop from?
Well, here comes the judge. Was we were shooting the show and Sammy Davis came by and we were doing a courtroom scene. And Sammy said, "Oh, do you remember when Pigmeat Markham used to do the 'Here Come the Judge'?" And I said, "Yeah, I remember that. He would do it all the time. 'Here Come the Judge' is a bridge from one joke into another." And I said, "Whatever happened?" He said, "Well, he's still alive." And I said, "Really?" And Sammy, we found a white wig, and Sammy started doing those walkovers, crossovers, doing 'Here Come the Judge'. Order in the courtroom, here comes the judge, And it caught on. We did it at 11 o'clock at night. And everybody the next day was doing "Here Come the Judge." So we put it in the next show. And by the end of the week, everybody was doing "Here Come the Judge.
Oh,
and it caught on. We took it from Pigmeat Markham.
Interesting.
Stole it, if you will.
Yeah, well, that's honest. What about "Sock It to Me"?
"Sock It to Me" was my wife, Jolene, who was a very, very talented actress and comedian. And she did a lot of the Ernie Kovacs shows, and she did Guestward Ho! And Gunsmoke. She did a very, very talented actress. And so one of the things Ernie would do with Jolene was he would do sight gags with her all the time.
Yeah.
And Jolene would show up, and Ernie would never tell her what she was going to do. She'd just show up and do it. And
Wow.
So part of those things were sight gags. She trapped doors and everything. And there was a record going, and respect was it. And as a chant underneath respect was the chant, "Sock it to me, sock it to me." And so Jolene was doing the Kovacs show and thought maybe that when she did one of these blackouts with Ernie, they ought to say "Sock it to me." And our daughter was in the back seat, Maria, who turned into a hell of a producer and a writer. But anyhow, she was just a baby.
Yeah.
And she heard in the back seat, and she started saying, "Yeah, sock it to me, sock it to me." Whoa, okay, that's it. We put it in the next show, and from then on, people were saying "Sock it to me," and "Sock it to me" had a mild kind of romantic or sexual connotation, and so in order to get around that, we did blackouts to it. So "Sock it to me" was always preceded by some disaster thing we would do to Judy Carn or Goldie Hawn or Sarah Purcell or something. And then we would do that chant, "Sock it to me, sock it," and it caught on.
It caught on big time. And, in regards, I mean, you mentioned a few of the players there, Goldie Hawn. Lily Tomlin was there, Judy Carn. I mean, these are all like incredible comedians.
Ruth Buzzi was one of them. Joanne Worley. Ruth Buzzi was an interesting thing. She came in to see me one day.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd seen her do a character, but I'd never really met the real Ruth Buzzi. She was a very attractive woman who could make herself look as like anything. And she went in the other room into our library room or our storage room and sat down at a piano and played her own composition of some weird song. And I just fell in love with her. And so she came in and she started doing Gladys Ormsby was her name. But Ruth did a number of other characters beyond just Gladys Ormsby. But she was so funny. And then Joanne Worley came in and she auditioned on the phone.
On the phone? How do you do that?
I heard that voice on the phone and I said, "I don't care what it looks like. That sound is great." Joanne Worley is a hell of a singer. And we only did one straight number the whole time of Laughin was she came in and had this ballad she wanted to do. And I said, "Well, we're just not going to do any straight numbers." She said, "Well, let me show you what we want to do. And we ought to play that number for you," because she started saying, "Why won't you come home?" And people started arriving. And then by the hundreds of them came in, and there was a guy on horseback and balloons and everything came in. Why won't you come home? But Joanne Worley was another one with a great voice, which we didn't use too much.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ruth Buzzi and Joanne and Goldie and Lily and Judy Carn. And it was a collection of people. See, nobody ever auditioned for Laughin. They just came in and saw me and I'd hire them. And now today you've got to go through 10 network executives and everybody to agree on who's going to be on the show. Back then, I didn't even think about auditioning for the network because they never understood what we were doing anyway.
Well, how did you even know of Goldie Hawn? Because I looked at the year of Laughin,
Yeah.
and I know that there was that Good Morning World that was with Ronnie Shell at the time that she was part of. Was that previous to that, or was that around the same time?
Was working on a Merv Griffin show as a dancer, and Carolyn Raskin, who started with me as a secretary, became a production assistant and eventually became the producer of Laughin. Brilliant woman who developed all, if not most, of the editing techniques that we use today. And yeah, she said, there's a girl downstairs and dancing, and you got to see her. Everybody's talking about her. I said, Carolyn, I'm not going to use straight dancers. I'm doing comedians. She said, well, you got to see this woman. And she was right. I went downstairs and everybody was talking about it. So I invited Goldie to come into the office for a meeting. Wow. And I remember she sat down in this big red leather chair. And there was this tiny little person in this big red, and she didn't know why I wanted her there. She said she was a dancer. She wasn't a comedian. And I said, well, we'll have you do some introductions. So we had her introduce Dan Rowan, and she screwed up the introduction so bad. He cracked up, and I went to say, do it. The director said, do it again. I said, no, never say do it to her again, ever. That'll be fine, Goldie. And she screwed it up the second time. We said, okay, hold it, everybody. So I said, Goldie, just relax. We'll try it one more time. So I told the cue card boys, I said, reverse all the words, invert it, because I wanted her to get that thing she got when she got it wrong. And Goldie looked at the wrong words and put them in the right order. And I looked, I said, what is this, some kind of a trick? Anyhow, from then on, we never let Goldie rehearse. She was the sweetest person in the world and a great dancer. And by the way, a hell of an actress. But from then on, Ruth and Joanne and everybody would do anything they could to confuse Goldie, to mix her up. And she'd get started to do something, and somebody would make a rude sound or noise or snoring or anything just to divert her attention. It was a delightful experience. It was a big playpen for semi-adult people. We would tape till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And if anything worked, we said, fine. We would do what was rehearsed and written. Then we would just play with that set or play with that situation.
Wow.
And, much of Laughin happened by accident.
Well, tell me this, before because I do want to kind of go in with how it came about, but I want to give credit to Lily Tomlin. How did you find Lily Tomlin? I mean, that's crazy.
Lily Tomlin was auditioning for a show in New York when I was leaving New York after one of my many dismissals, right? And there was a girl on stage doing a routine about a rubber freak, a woman who ate rubber, and which sounds weird now, but it really sounded weird then.
Yeah.
And, but I came back home, and we then sold this show. And I kept thinking about this woman who did the rubber freak. And then I saw a show that she was in, and I said, that's the girl I've been looking for. Wow. So Lily had done 2 or 3 shows that didn't really work out. So she was leaving to go back home to New York. Really didn't even want to come in for a meeting with me.
Oh my gosh.
She came in, and was supposed to be a half an hour, a 15-minute meeting. We did like 3 hours.
Whoa.
And she did all of these characters, these wonderful people kept just appearing as Lily would talk. And so she said, well, which character do you want to do? I said, I want to do them all.
Oh, wow.
So we did. We brought her in. And I think the first thing she did was Ernestine, the telephone operator.
Oh, memorable.
Just this whole thing, 1 ringy dingy, 2 ringy, just the party to whom I am speaking. And she said, is this, she called, her first call was to William Buckley. And is this Mr. Phil Buckley? And people were terrified to get a call from Ernestine, because she would attack the establishment. And there was this attractive woman sitting there and dialing the phone. Is this the party to whom I am speaking? She called Gore Vedel, Mr. Vedel, and William Buckley. Lily was a delight because she would go in the dressing room and she would come out as a whole different person, whether it was Ernestine or Edith Ann, the little girl, and all of these people just appearing out of this one brilliant actress. And so I had great fun with Lily because we would be in the dressing room and we would make up a piece or make up a routine, and she would put on a wig or a different coat or dress and come out of the dressing room a whole different person and go out on stage, and just the audience was fixated on this wonderful, wonderful woman becoming all of these different people. Brilliant, brilliant actress.
Wow, just amazing. And then also Artie Johnson. How did Artie come about? Because I can picture him in my head right now.
Artie Johnson was selling suits at Carroll's, which was a men's store. And he was this little guy who'd done a lot of like summer stock and whatever. And Temmie Brenner, who was our press agent at the time, brought Artie Johnson to the house just to say hello. And he came, he wore this German helmet, and it was Easter. And he was the Easter Nazi. And he came around our front yard dropping eggs as the Easter Nazi. This sounds weird. It sounded weird then, too. But,
this is unreal.
And Artie became all of these different people, you know, all these different accents and everything. And we would do crazy kind of musical comedy numbers. And Artie didn't want to be in them. So we would always put Artie, so we always had to kind of drag Artie through all these. So when you see the show, you'll see Artie being helped. And many times you won't even see Artie. You'll see his brother, Coslow, who looked like Artie, and he'd put on the helmet and do it. But Artie became many different people, as did Lily, I mean, we somehow or another, luckily managed to find, corral, hire, whatever, this group of crazy people who were available because there was no other show doing those kind of people.
Right.
You had guest stars, you had singers and dancers and actors and actresses and comics, but these were not comics. These were young character people who in front of your eyes became different people. So, and the network at that point had nothing to put on opposite whatever it was.
The D. Martin, was it the D. Martin show?
No, we were long before that. Anyhow,
a
disaster time period at 8 o'clock on Monday night. And so they just put us on because the show costs nothing. And so they just put it on, and they didn't even watch us for the first 3 weeks. But after 3 weeks, they began to be aware that everybody in the hall was saying "Sock it to me" and "Look that up in your Fnk and Wagnalls." And, they said, "Can't you just say Fnk and Wagnalls?" We would use words and we'd say, "Look that up in your Fnk and Wagnalls." They were always concerned with the long F. But so much of Laughin was an accident, and Artie was an accident because Artie, who was going to hire a short, tone deaf Nazi impersonator, right? And I did. I fell in love with Artie, and we had great fun with Artie Johnson. We had great fun with them all. They all came in, and we would tape till 2 o'clock in the morning. And anybody came in with an idea or a character or a voice, we'd say, "Great, put that on." And
wow, that's amazing.
Much of Laughin was an accident.
Yeah,
they didn't need to buy it. It was in a disaster time period where they were getting no rating at all, and so they just bought us to put something on, so they didn't have to go to a test pattern. And they put this on. After 3 or 4 weeks, it started to hit. And when it started to hit, then, I mean, I'm arrogant now, but you could have seen me like 40 years ago. Poor boy.
Yeah. Was it they and obviously, I mean, I've heard many stories about how they were like, "Oh, you can't do that. You got to pull that back," or whatever. Yeah. Were you such a hit that you were like,
well, it started out doing things they didn't understand. They didn't know. They had no idea that "Sock it to me" might have had a minor sexual connotation or whatever. And we put 6 censors in the home. We literally put 6 censors into rehab They would come and can't do that. While they were explaining to me why we couldn't do this, we were doing that, which they explained to me before that we couldn't do. But the feeling of danger, the feeling of being on the edge and going over the edge, and with his cast of beautiful, young, talented people who became all of these different characters, and they didn't understand it. They didn't understand Ruth Buzzi as Gladys Ormsby, and it was, you couldn't do it today. Today, you have to have a network meeting with 10 people. Then Herb Schlosser would come in and say, I've had another complaint about what you're doing, and you're taping too late, and you're doing all of this stuff, and Judy Carn's not wearing a brassiere. I said, you're lucky she's wearing pants. Let her alone. and you got to see me, man. That many years ago, I was outrageous, and I was, and I'd been through everything you could be through. And so Laughin just seemed like another playful little romp. And the playful little romp began. You know, today you get a 3 or a 4 rating and everybody's thrilled, right? We got a 50 share. That meant that half of the people in the country were watching Laughin. And with a 50 share, to tell me you couldn't do it, I said, well, why don't you fire me? And no. So they eventually they did, I guess. But it was a different time.
Yeah.
Politically, it was a different time. And economically, it was a different time, and we didn't have any money really to do the show. We didn't pay the people a lot of money. Well, eventually, when you get Goldie Hawn on every cover and you get Lily Tomlin, you know, they started to get a lot of money elsewhere too.
Definitely.
It was once in a lifetime.
How did you ever get Richard Nixon on the show? I still find that one, even today, astounding.
Well, Paul Keyes was a writer that worked with Richard Nixon. He was Richard Nixon's closest friend. And so we hired him on the staff of Laughin because we wanted the appearance of being balanced. And Paul was so far to the right, he was doing cartwheels, you know. So he came in as one of the writers because the head writer was Digby Wolfe, who was a true anarchist. And so that balanced our writing staff. And we were on the air, we were doing well, and we needed something to kick off the premiere of the next season, because how do you duplicate this energy that we had?
Right.
So I said, Paul Keyes said, well, maybe I can get Nixon. Well, I was not a big fan of Richard Nixon. You know, I said, well, get him for me too. So we went over to CBS, where he was taping a promo, and Paul Keyes talked to him and said, Mr. Nixon, would you just say sock it to me? He says, yes, sock it to me. No. Just smile and say sock it to me. Yes, this comedy thing is new for me, you know. He said, sock it to me, sock it to me. So anyhow, we got 6 takes of him saying somewhere that tape exists. But eventually we got the friendly one saying sock it to me, surprise. And we left CBS, got in the car, took that tape back to NBC and put it in the next show. And everybody gasped because Richard Nixon was straighter than a ruler, you know. I mean, you couldn't. There was no humor, there was no charm, there was no warmth. It was just this angry man, right? And we humanized him. And they say that helped to elect him. And I've had to live with that.
Yeah.
But Paul Keyes delivered Richard Nixon.
That's very interesting that happened. The other one, too, that I've seen, I saw you say that, hey, I knew Sammy Davis Jr. when he was a very young man. How did you meet Sammy?
Well, Sammy was part of an act, the Will Maston Trio. It was the Will Maston Trio. Then it was the Will Maston Trio with Sammy Davis Jr. Will Maston Trio featuring Sammy Davis. Then Phil Maston Trio starring Sammy Davis. Then it was Sammy Davis and the Will Maston. But as he grew, he was one of the most talented people ever.
Agreed.
He was a baby. When he was a baby, they had him working on the streets doing things, you know. And he was a tap dancer who taught himself, and then he heard these voices, and this enormously talented young man could emulate any one of the voices he heard. So we began doing impressions. So Sammy was a friend of mine because I was working in Vegas and the Frontier and whatever. And Sammy was working at Larry Potter's in the San Fernando Valley. And we were doing an opening with Janice Page was the biggest star on Broadway. And so we were going to have Janice Page opening at Ciro's. And so we hired Sammy Davis. as the opening act. He was going to do like 12 or 15 minutes tap dancing and doing whatever.
Oh my gosh.
And Sammy came out and looked at that audience and said, oh my God, because every star in the world was there for Janice Page. And he hit that stage, and forget the 15 minutes. He did it an hour and 10.
Oh
and
my gosh.
On stage. But I mean, this man just attacked, and he became all of those different people doing impressions and singing and dancing and everything. So from then on, he was a big, big star. And I was doing the shows. I was producing the shows at the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas, which is where I acquired much of my colorful past, of which there's been very little written, thank you. Anyhow, but Sammy, he opened in Ciro's, and I called Jay Kozloff and I said, Sammy Davis opened. No black act ever worked Vegas. I mean, it was just a color barrier, you know? And I said, I want to book him. And he said, isn't he that colored fellow, black fellow? Yeah. I said, and he's going to work. He said, well, all right, book him. So I said, not just for a week or anything. I'm going to book him for a month. Jake Kozlov, who could, melt a glacier when he looked at it. And he said, for a month, are you crazy? I said, not only that, but he's going to work he's going to stay in a hotel, and you're going to let black people come in and watch the show.
Wow.
Said, no way. We're going to let black, are you kidding? I said, Jake, if you don't, he's going to open at Macombo. And so Jake Kozlov reluctantly agreed to hiring Sammy. Well, when Sammy hit the Las Vegas Strip, turned the whole town inside out. And what a talented guy. And he could do anything. He was
Literally.
a good friend.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Really interesting.
My episodes with Sammy go on forever. What?
Let's go back in your career a little bit there too. So you're you did the Judy Garland show,
yes,
as well. Did you have a sense at that time, like, of Judy's issues? Did you have to kind of work around it? What was that whole experience
was
like?
I had been doing I was working at NBC, and I was booking acts and so forth. And Dinah Shore was the Dinah Shore Chevy Show, was the biggest show on NBC.
Mm-hmm.
And so her producer, Bob Finkel, went to New York to do something else. And so they needed a producer. Well, Dinah wanted to do more comedy, and that was hello. So I came in, and we started doing things with Dinah. And I became very friendly with her, and I love her. She gave me my really first kind of break.
Wow.
And we did the Dinah Shore Chevy Show. And then the next year, Judy Garland was going to come on the air, and I wanted to do that show. Well, there was no way they were going to hire basically a joke junkie that had been doing Dinah to do the Judy Garland show. So I chased her down the Rodeo Drive in a car.
Wow.
Then I chased Mike Dan, and I said, you have to hire me to do that show. I'm the only guy that can do this show. So eventually, because Judy was famous for being difficult.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
So, but I didn't want to meet her before I was hired, because how do you audition for Judy Garland when I was in my 20s? You crazy? You can't.
Right.
So eventually I got the job before I ever met her. And first night they introduced me to Judy Garland, and I walked in. I didn't know I was going to meet her, and it was 9 o'clock at night. And I walked in, and there was Judy Garland. And I mean, it was pretty impressive. I was amazed how tiny she was. And
wow.
I didn't know what to say. So I said, for some reason I'll never understand, I said, Miss Garland, I don't care what you may have heard, there's no truth to the rumor that I'm difficult. And she looked at me like, what? I said, see, even you've heard it. You're difficult. She said, even you've heard it. I said, well, I'm not difficult. She said, you're not difficult. She said, why don't we go have a drink? So my first meeting with Judy Garland lasted maybe 4 minutes. We went across the street and consumed a lot of Blue Nun Liebfraumilch. And I just fell in love with her, because at that point, I was a very brash, outspoken guy that had worked a lot in Vegas, so I wasn't afraid of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we began doing the show, and one of the first assignments was they had bought the Judy Garland show, and they had convinced the affiliates to come to the Waldorf Astoria, 1,100 of them, and meet Judy Garland. And she said, I'm not going to go back there. I said, Judy, you have to prove to them that you're reliable. She said, but I'm not reliable. So I said, well,
right.
We got on a plane, and we went back to New York. And on the plane, one of the writers on the show is a young man by the name of Johnny Bradford, and we wrote a parody on Call Me Irresponsible. So here she comes in 1,100 affiliates who didn't even know what she was going to be. There was a magical personality at that point.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so she walks out on stage, and on the way out, she got her heel caught in a tiny little thing in the Waldorf Astoria stage, and she was locked under that. And she had to take off her shoes. So here she is being introduced to 1,100 CBS affiliates, and she comes out barefoot, sat on the edge of the stage and sang this parody of "Call me irresponsible, call me unreliable, call me undependable too. Have my foolish alibis bored you? I won't take a powder I can't afford to." Well,
Wow.
the place just exploded, you know.
Wow.
And so Judy was a big hit. Well, now CBS, who was really wanted to just have her for that affiliates, they never thought she was going to show up for the show.
Yeah.
We're now convinced that I could do anything with Judy. So we did the first 5 shows were equally unpredictable. We booked Mickey Rooney for her first show.
Wow.
CBS said, "But Mickey Rooney, he's not doing it." I said, "Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland were magic." So we put the 2 of them together, and then we did Judy and Lena Horne. And
Wow.
so I mean, we did 5 shows in 6 weeks, and it exploded. Everybody was now. They were then amazed that Judy Garland was reliable, was dependable, and we taped them like live shows, top to bottom. 8 o'clock,
Wow.
we do the show, and that was it. And she was reliable, dependable. But after the 5 shows, they were convinced that I could get her to do anything. And a
Wow.
man by the name of Hunt Stromberg came in the dressing room and said, "Listen, Judes," that really turned her on. We want you to have a family." And I'm looking around saying, "Oh, God." And then Judy says, "I have a family." I said, "No, they wanted Ken Murray, Bob Denver, Mary Alorn, and somebody else, Carol Williams." And I mean, these were all people who were actors and actresses, and they wanted her to be the family around them like Carol Burnett had.
On the
And
show?
yeah,
Wow.
they wanted them to be surround her rather than these Judy Garland kind of Dinah Shore, Lena Horne guest stars that I'd been booking. And I remember telling Hunt Stromberg, we're going to take him outside to play in the traffic. I was somewhat arrogant at that point.
Yeah, just somewhat, just a little.
Delivered Judy Garland. Nobody expected that.
Right.
So that, coupled with my own innate abundance of arrogance, I could do anything. So I said, and so CBS said they wanted her to be Dinah Shore. I said, no. They wanted me to do with Judy what I'd done with Dinah, which was a warm, wonderful talking.
Right.
And I said,
Totally different people.
They wanted her to talk. I said, "She's not a talker. She's anyhow." So that's when I put this steamer trunk on stage, and I filled it with her memorabilia, things out of her past.
Oh, great.
She couldn't do a monologue like we'd done with Dinah, with any of the other people. So she came out, opened this trunk, and pulled out different things from her career and from her past. And it was magical. It was wonderful.
Oh, I would have loved to have seen that.
Well, you can see what happened is those first 5 shows, they wouldn't air them in sequence. They wanted her to be another kind of a singer. So they brought in another producer. I remember it was Norman Jewison came in, looked at the 5 shows and said, "That's what I would do with her." They said, "What? We just..." Anyway, I was released from the show.
Ridiculous.
And then she came out and they buried those 5 shows down into the series. And when they finally aired those 5 shows, the audience went crazy because it was Judy Garland unplugged and
yeah,
sitting on the stage. We brought Judy Garland in with Liza Minnelli, who had not been seen on network television.
Oh my gosh.
Judy Garland. They sat there, and we did not have a dress rehearsal. We just had rehearsed. Well, I went through it, and we taped the dress rehearsal. And Judy had Liza pulled her down to sit on her lap. Well, Judy Garland singing Liza with her daughter sitting on her lap was magical, but the network wanted much different than that. So anyhow, I was one of the many times when I was released.
Well, I can't, it's just amazing to me because if there's a king of like the variety specials, it's you. I mean, you are like unbelievable. I'm like, George, I looked at your career and I'm just like, wow, I don't know who else this guy could work with. One biggie for me, I've always been a Sinatra fan. I mean,
Oh,
my whole life, my dad played him, my mom, I just, what, you did 80 years of Sinatra My Way. You did,
yeah.
I believe the 75th birthday
I
celebration.
I would look much younger were it not for Frank Sinatra. Son
Yeah,
of a
tell me
bitch,
about it.
son of a bitch never went to bed, and he occasionally and occasionally Francis Albert Sinatra would ingest spirits, and I would go, glass for glass with Sinatra.
Oh,
I had
geez.
such adventures with Frank Sinatra, and again, I guess it was my somewhat humble beginnings where everybody was terrified of Frank Sinatra, and
Right.
rightfully so. He was a very difficult, unpredictable man, but if you could make him laugh, you owned him. And so I did things to Frank that made him laugh, and we wound up very close friends. And I could get him to do almost anything. Um,
Can you
uh,
tell us about one of those experiences that you had with Frank?
oh boy, I mean they go they go on and on and on. Frank, of course, closest friend was a man by the name of Jilly Rizzo.
Yep.
And Jilly had round hands from having lost his knuckles on their various people's skulls.
Oh,
And
geez.
so while we would be doing a show, I remember one time we were doing something for Sammy or somebody, and all of the stars arrived and they had their entourage. This one with 10 people, this one with 20 people, everybody, their protectors and their entourage. And Frank arrived with Jilly, just carrying a suit, and it was just Frank. And
Wow.
and so he was so unpredictable. But he was magic. And when he walked out on that stage, boy, he commanded an audience, and he loved to laugh. So uh, um, we did one thing where they convinced Frank to do a commercial, and he
Wow.
said, "I don't do commercials." So I said, "But now they're going to pay him a big number, right?" So I said, "Frank, look, we'll lay it out so it's going to be easy." So we laid out a commercial where he would go from one place to another, and in each place he'd do a little bit here. Then between that place and the next place, he would do part of the commercial. And then he'd go to another place and do more. So we had like 8 stops for him to make it, and each stop he did a different part of the commercial. So he said, "All right, crazy." He said, "All right." So he gets there, and it was for Japanese Airways. And so when he comes to the studio, we had geisha girls at each place all the way on to the dressing room when he was going to change clothes. So he came out and he said, "Can I go home now?" I said, "No, Frank. I told him it was going to be 30 minutes." And so I said, "Well, not yet, So he started doing it. He'd do a bit, and then he came out with his tuxedo and the hoop and all his stuff out. Then he did a bit, and then there were stills, and then another bit, and then stills. And we went from one location to another, and it was going really, really well.
Yeah.
We're one stop away from the end. And he says, "Okay, that's it."
Oh,
"No, Frank, you need this last shot." He says, "No." I said, "Frank, I have to have the last shot." "Then you do it." I said, "No, Frank, all I need is this one more shot. Please." He said, "You're not going to get it."
wow.
So I said, "Now here I am having committed to Japanese Airways to get this commercial."
Yeah.
I said, why I said this, I don't know. I said, "Frank, I need this shot." He said, "You're not going to get it." I said, "Don't make me hurt you." I don't know why I said it. I would never say it again. And
Oh.
anybody with a half a brain never would have said it. He said, "You're going to hurt me." I said, "If I don't get the commercial." So he said, "Okay, let's get this. Just get out of here. I don't want him to hurt me." So he does the last spot and he leaves. It was exactly 30 minutes. And so everybody was stunned, thinking, well, I was some kind of a magician. So now they sell another commercial.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so this time I'm getting a big number too, because they'd convinced me to just come and be with him. So, but when I delivered him doing this 30-minute commercial, they thought I was a magician. So we do the next one. And I invited his wife, Barbara Sinatra, who had a lot to do with Frank's well-being.
Yeah.
He shows up, and anybody want to take pictures? And he was just the most cooperative, adorable person you've ever met. He was so many different people, and I
Wow.
loved them all.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's just amazing. Now he did the I believe it was the tour with Sammy and Liza as a trio. How and you I believe you produced that or what
Yeah.
or
It was
whatever.
supposed to be Frank and Dean and Sammy.
Right.
And they opened in Chicago, and we were going to tape the act, Dean, Frank, and Sammy. And Dean got bored. He was not happy, and so after the first show, he went upstairs, and he called he called the pilot and said, "Frank told me to take his plane and go home." So he did. So now when Frank the next day got up ready to get on his plane was gone. Where'd the plane go? Dean took it, right? Well, that created another problem for me, because I thought I was going to get to know Jilly too well. And so then we called up, Liza. And so the three of them did the tour, Dean and Frank and Liza and Sammy. And that was magical too. But so much of my success has been luck. So much of my success has been a question of successful survival techniques. But Frank Sinatra loomed large then and still does.
He does. I agree with
Memories
you.
of good times. So he was a delight.
Well, what about, you say about, you had a lot of, which you did, you've been around all these people that, a lot of people go, I don't know if I could even handle them or whatever. What about Lucy and Desi? What was your relationship like with them?
Well, I used to manage Ciro's before I went into nightclubs and saloons in Vegas and whatever. I managed a nightclub on the Sunset Strip called Ciro's, which was the top nightclub. Ciro's.
Very famous.
That's right. And Lucy and Desi used to come into Ciro's, and they were there the night they bought their house on Roxbury, and they were all impressed with their home. Anyhow, Lucy had a son, little Desi, and he was a grown man now, right?
Sure.
But he formed a little band, and they wanted to know would I book him on the Dinah Shore show. So I booked this Desi Arnaz and his band on the Dinah Shore show. And Lucy was very grateful. So when I went to New York to do the Steve Lawrence show, Steve was not as important as the guest stars we wanted to hire. I mean, it was the last minute booking on CBS. All the other shows it was on the last show after following two other variety hours.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody thought they were more important than Steve, and I got to have somebody open the series in New York. So I called up Lucy and I asked her if she would do this show, and she said, "I'm not going to go to New York. What, on a set to sing on the Schubert?" I said, "Well, okay, Lucy, what do I tell the elephant?" And she went, "What do you mean, what elephant?" I said, "Well, I hired this pink elephant to come on Schubert Alley with you and Steve Lawrence, and you can sing together on Schubert Alley." She said, "Singing together on Schubert Alley at 11 o'clock on a Saturday? Are you crazy?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What time do you need me?" So anyhow, then Lucy came back and did. I've got a picture. I got to show you the picture of Lucy on the elephant. And Lucy and I became very, very friendly. And eventually I did another special with Dinah Shore, and Lucy came on and worked with Dinah Shore and Diana Ross and Lucy.
What?
It was wonderful.
Come on.
These two superstar evil women, and did not like working with Diana Ross because Diana Ross was young and pretty and cute and whatever and skinny. And so they kept upstaging her. We would do the duet trio we did. And when we would get to the part, they would both step back, and Diana would turn around and look at him. So I was getting the side of Diana's face. I said, no. Girls, Lucy and Diana, stop it now. Stop it. And they said, "Well, we're just trying to help her. You're killing her. Let her alone." So yeah, I've got a clip of that too you ought to hear, which is Diana Ross, Dinah Shore and Diana Ross and Lucy. And it turned out pretty good, but it was difficult to get because these two superstar ladies just upstaging poor little Diana Ross unmercifully.
Oh, that is so funny. The other one. What?
My whole career is a series of misadventures.
Well, I saw you say Cher was an event, and I was like, wow, that's quite a statement. Why, where do you think she was getting, like, I guess when you said that, what were you thinking? I guess I've always heard about her kind of insecurities or whatever.
Yeah, she was insecure. She
Yeah.
was. Uh, again, it's Cher. Sonny, she split up with Sonny, and then Sonny got killed and whatever, and so I'd worked with Cher. She came in to do a Laughin, by the way, I think it was.
No kidding.
And so this was before Laughin went on the air, and Cher was a guest star. God, I haven't thought about this. And she came in to do the show, and Laughin, as you know, was not a musical show. It was all just comedy.
Right.
And she was having a great time. Not a great reader, but she was having a great time. And so I noticed Sonny was very nervous because I realized Sonny was looking for a straight variety show where Cher was going to sing. There were no songs. And so Sonny said, where are Cher's songs? And I went, oh my God, he doesn't realize there's going to be no song. So we called Billy Barnes, who was a brilliant, brilliant special material writer. I said, Billy, where's Cher's song? And Billy looked at me like, are you crazy? We've just gone through a month of saying not going to do any straight. What song? I said, you know, and I don't know why I said it, you know, the Mountie number. The Mountie number. I said, yeah, come on, I know where it is. So we went in the other room. I said, Billy, write me a Mountie number. And he said, what the hell are you talking about, Mountie? I said, Tim Conway is a Mountie and she's an Indian, and he wears and he gets a strap on his hat caught in her. He says, that's a joke. I don't do that. I said, I don't do music. I do jokes. So Billy Barnes looked at me like I'd slapped him, and he said, a Mountie number for Cher and Tim Conway. That's another thing you ought to run. So they go off, and in 15 minutes, Billy Barnes came back with a Mountie number with Cher. I'm a Mountie, you're a Mountie, whatever. And it was great, and Cher loved it. And we realized at that point that Cher was not a great singer. She was a stylist, and she could not dance. And but she was a magical personality. And so I convinced her after the first year to I said, Cher, look, because it was a big hit. Everybody wanted to see Cher without Sonny and what was going to happen, and Sonny was gone. Yeah. And so we started doing sketches with Cher, and it was difficult because she didn't really read it a lot and whatever. And so we went on, and I said, I want you to spend this summer working on one dance routine, working as exercise, as an aerobic exercise, and we'll turn that into a dance number. She said, well, all right. I said, and give me just 2 more notes on each, the top and the bottom, so we can do a whole nother selection of songs. Oh, okay. And I want you to go to an improv class, and we'll do just sketches and things. So Cher, which was a tough sell, was reluctant, but I adore her. And she was much more talented than she knew. And so she comes in, and so she agrees to all of this. And then that night she met Greg Allman, and they played in the sprinklers till about 3 o'clock in the morning. And she never did rehearse, never did do the aerobics, never did that.
Oh my gosh.
Came out, and we started doing the show. And gradually she became more secure. She was totally insecure, but she's a she's not the most talented singer, dancer, comedian, actress. She's a magical personality. And she survived all of that and became very proficient at all of those things.
Yeah, she's also just very likable. I mean, you know, as a fan, I look at her and I go, wow. You know,
she appears to be vulnerable. In fact, Cher's about as vulnerable as a chunk of granite, but she appears to be vulnerable, and she kind of hides behind this kind of whimsical image. The woman is a stone, a rock, and very, very talented. She's a magical personality. She would be a magical personality if she was working in a dress shop. But she was on television, and the audience related to her. She was vulnerable. She was, but she was magical, and she is today. She is today. I adore her, and I had more fun with Cher because I was always asking her to do things she didn't really want to do.
Right.
She called me Hammer. You know, I called her Nails because she was always interrupting rehearsal to have her nails done. and she was always calling. I would get her to do things she didn't want to do, so she called me Hammer.
Oh
So I would
my
hammer
gosh,
and she
that's
would dance.
hysterical. What so you've worked with so many people. I would love to just ask you about a few of them, to say the least. What about Bob Hope? What was it like working with Bob Hope?
Well, I worked with Bob Hope before Laugh-In hit,
Mhm.
and so he didn't really know what to expect. He came in to do some cameo lines to plug his own show, and he was out there doing "Hi there, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's watch on Saturday Night Watch," and I sent Artie Johnson out as the German, which was heresy at that point, because nobody even Bob Hope was a god, and Artie Johnson came out and stood beside him, and he said, "Mr. Hope, every Christmas we waited for you, and you never came to visit us. Always dear." And Hope turned around and saw this little German, and he said, "Well, what are you? Why you're standing in a hole?" And he then went into the Hope that we thought, with all of the ad libs and whatever, with nothing written. He stood there with Artie Johnson for about 8 minutes. I've got a tape of that someplace.
Oh,
I mean, Hope was mesmerized by Artie Johnson. So we got people, because Laugh-In was so hot at one point that everybody wanted to do the show to promote, plug whatever they were doing.
yeah, sure.
And Hope was one of them. And but it was fun. It was fun. We'd tape 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and people,
Right.
we'd grab them in the hall and ask them, "Would you come in?" We did one thing with John Wayne when I asked him to do the show. He said, "I'm not gonna do that show. That's the end of it. I'm not gonna do that show." So we put that on the air.
Oh, funny. I mean,
I've got
just too
somewhere
funny.
the Hope say it was John Wayne saying he wasn't gonna do the show. But,
Well, what about some of these other people that too? What about Jack Benny?
well, Benny was the sweetest, most simple man, and Mary, I loved her too. But Benny, I would get Jack Benny to come in and do lines that didn't make sense to him, and his bewilderment was valuable, because he would. And so we put him with Goldie, and he said, we did one thing with Jack Benny. He said, "Goldie, what do you think after the show if we went out and we have a little bite to eat and a couple of drinks and just hang around together?" And Goldie said, "Well, I can't see any harm in that." And Benny said, "I wish you could." Well, Goldie didn't understand. Goldie didn't understand that it was a thinly veiled proposition, but the two of them developed a great relationship. Benny was a delightful man, very simple, very gentle, and very and he would take long pauses, and
Like really long pauses.
yeah, well, we did a thing with "Hurry up, Mr. Benny, hurry up, Mr. Benny, hurry up, we got to go, we got to go." And Benny would say, "Hurry up." Benny didn't understand it because he was in the midst of this avalanche of tumult and jokes and crazy people coming in and out, and he loved it, but he didn't understand it.
Wow. Now, what about going the other direction here? What about Michael Jackson? Working with Michael Jackson.
Well, I mean, the Jackson family, I knew them since Michael was a baby, and the whole Jackson family, because I was doing musical shows, and we would invite the Jackson Five to come in and perform. And
Sure.
gradually, over a period of time, I developed a relationship with the whole family. And Michael would do anything. He was a family were good friends of ours, and it was a great talented family of people. But then Michael just exploded, and maybe my favorite thing with Michael Jackson was we're doing a tribute to Sammy Davis. What happened was Sammy Davis was known to be a problem and not to show up. Sammy had trouble, but I was finally able to convince NBC to do a Sammy Davis special.
Yeah.
And so now, I announced it, we're going to do this special, and he found out he had throat cancer.
Oh,
and he
man.
came to me and said, "We have a problem with Sammy. He's not going to be able to be there because he has throat, and he's undergoing chemotherapy."
Oh my gosh.
And here I am with a commitment to do an hour show. And so I go to Sammy. I say, "Sammy, now look, I've sold this show, and people have said they're going to do this show, and now don't expect me to go out there and make some kind of an announcement." And he said, "No, I'll be there." So when people found out about Sammy's problem, everybody agreed to do the show. I mean, everybody in show business agreed to be there, either in the audience or on stage.
Wow.
And so one of the things I had to deliver in order to sell it, I had to deliver Michael Jackson and Eddie Murphy and Bill Cosby and Lena Horne. Anyhow, I had committed to deliver all of these people before I had a commitment to do the show. And see, people will never believe me again if they hear these stories. But anyhow, so they all said, okay. And sure enough, Sammy did show up, and everybody showed up to do that show.
What was Eddie Murphy like to work with at that
well, what happened was I needed somebody to open the show. And so Eddie Murphy, as you know from his reputation, was occasionally guilty of questionable taste.
Yes.
He was vulgar many times.
Yeah.
So I wanted somebody to open it that would be unpredictable. So I went to Eddie and I told him I wanted him to open the show. And he said, yes, right away. So he came in that night, and now you must understand, this audience is full of celebrities and the stage is full of celebrities. And at one point, Gregory Peck said to Shirley MacLaine, Shirley, we must be careful not to be the first two white people to fuck up. And so I have that on tape. Anyhow, so it was just a magical night, but we needed somebody to open the show. So I talked to Eddie Murphy. So he said he'd open the show. So he comes in and I said, Eddie, we have this opening, and now I want you to understand, Sammy will be seated over on your left, and he's going to be with his family, with his mother, with his father. With and I want you to be kind. He said, you don't want me to say motherfucker. I said, well, that's a good place to start, Ed. Yeah, he may be right. That's a good beginning. Yeah. So he came out and did the most charming Eddie Murphy you've ever seen in your life. And then we didn't know who to close the show. And so I said to Ella Fitzgerald, I wanted her to close. She said, no, I'm not going to follow this show. I'm not. I said, we've already got Eddie Murphy's going to come out, and Michael Jackson's going to come out with you for the finale. So Ella said, well, oh, okay, well, they're coming out. So then I had to convince them to do what I had already told Ella we were going to do. My whole career is kind of spotted with mistakes, adventures, unbelievable situations, which many of which turned out to be pretty
very exciting though. So was it easy working with Ella?
It was wonderful. Oh, I had fun with Ella. Oh, what a delightful woman she was, and see, they were people who everyone respected. Ella Fitzgerald, they respected. Nat Cole, everybody respected.
Big time.
Everybody worshiped those performers. And because of my early days in saloons and in Vegas, I had relationships with some of those people. So I was able to deliver performers that many people were not able to convince to do shows. So we had great fun. We had Sammy tap dancing with the Clark brothers. I mean, unpredictable combinations, and we were very fortunate. Peter Sellers was another one. I went to New York, and he was doing a movie, Magic, whatever it was, and I convinced him to come out. And he said, and I said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have this one sketch, and the sketch runs 12 minutes." Are you crazy? So anyhow, we did the embassy sketch, which you also ought to run. It was wonderful. He played about 7 characters in this one sketch.
Wow.
And, the fact that nobody could do it was in a movie, it would be a 4-day shoot. With us, I had literally like an hour. Wow. And so we went from one place to another, and we just taped his portions and then put them together.
He seemed like he was so out there, Peter Sellers. Like in a lot of interviews I see him, he's just on a whole nother plane.
He was out there. He was out there, but so was I. And Peter was trying to do naughty things to Liza Minnelli, and I approved of that. There was another magical personality. I mean, when we did the first show with, was doing the series with Lena, and she had Liza Minnelli come out and sit on her lap, and she sang Liza with Judy Garland sang.
Judy Garland, yeah.
Judy Garland sang to Liza Minnelli, Liza, magical moment. You ought to get that too.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt.
Had a good time. That's what it all boils down to.
Were you involved with Robin Williams' initial play?
Oh yeah, Robin Williams. God damn, it sounds like I wrote show business. I didn't. He used to ask me about interesting people. Robin Williams, I was in San Francisco, and I saw Robin Williams on the street, and he was barefoot, and he was wearing a crazy hat, and he was he had a fish pole out over the audience, and he says, "I'm fishing for assholes," and he was out doing this whole crazy thing, right? And I fell in love with him. He wore overalls and barefoot and a hat and a fish pole. So I said, "Young man, I think you're terrific, and if you can clean up your act, take a shower, and put on some shoes, I've got a job for you." So I came back from New York, and 3 days later, and there was Robin in a suit. "I'm ready to go to work, boss." And he walked on stage, and you couldn't write a sketch for Robin because whatever he came up with by himself was funnier than anything you could write.
Wow.
And so he came out, and we would put Robin out there with anybody that came on the show. We would put Robin out there with him, and he went out there with Sinatra. And Sinatra just could not believe Robin Williams. You know,
Wow.
Nobody could really understand what Robin was doing because he had all these different accents and dialects, and he was so fast. And
could Frank even talk with him? Was Frank even able to talk with him while they were together?
Robin, I'll run you the clip. Robin said, he touched me. Robin said, he touched me. He touched me just like he knew me. He said, "I'm so excited I could drop a log." That's what put Sinatra away. Could drop a log. And but Robin was a delightful human being, and evidently, some of the euphoria, some of the hyper energy that Robin had was drug induced, and I didn't know it. And he eventually got in trouble, but he was a delightful young man.
Wow.
I had great fun with him. I've got a clip of him accepting an award, and he wouldn't come down for the award, so we went up to him in San Francisco. Wow. And there's a great clip of Robin. So Robin was one of my most pleasurable and saddest experiences in my whole life, because I wish Robin had lived forever.
So do I. Wow, that's just
comedy's very elusive, as I'm proving in this interview. Comedy, man. See, it's a thing where the baby is born. You don't have to teach it how to sleep, eat, cry, or laugh. It just does all those things automatically. When to sleep, what to eat, not to cry, and to be very careful of what it laughs at. You see a little baby's laughing. The brightest children are the ones that laugh the most. And you don't know what they're laughing at. You later on figure out it was us they were laughing at.
Right.
So laughter is the most elusive, the most rewarding, most gratifying feeling you can have is to laugh, and to get a laugh is even more seductive, you know.
I think you are a living proof of that. I'm sorry.
No, wait, barely living. You don't understand.
No,
superannuated joke junkie who's barely surviving. I may not last through this whole interview, for Christ's sake.
Okay, to kind of wrap it up a little bit here, just tell me this: why do you think you were always willing to take a risk? Because your entire career, I looked at all these specials. You took so many risks. What was it? Where does that emanate from?
To begin with, you obviously have done too much research, so I may have to kill you. I think it came from my mother, who was a devout Christian Scientist, who convinced me that I could overcome anything, and I did. I had a burn, and I had polio, and I had all of these different things that I overcame, and now I'm alarmingly healthy. But that was part of it. But when you don't have a lot of money, laughter is the panacea. Laughter is the next best thing to a steak sandwich. You know, I mean, it's fulfilling. Laugh is something you can't tell when it's coming. You don't. Sometimes you don't know what's going to make you laugh. Sometimes you laugh when you shouldn't laugh. Sometimes you don't laugh when you would hope to laugh. Laughter is very elusive and very seductive and very warm. I mean, it's the best feeling in the world. You see an audience laughing, you look at an audience of happy people. You see an audience applauding an opera or whatever. That's nice. But a laughter, wow, it's the best feeling in the world.
Is that what pushed you towards taking these risks?
I think the fact that laughs are gratifying. I mean, you know, I'm not just speaking about my sex life. I mean, there was an old
Jolene will love that.
expression.
No kidding.
Are you going to be able to use any of this?
Yes, George, I'm
babbling
using
of
it all.
An old fool talking
Hey,
about
the very last one, I'll ask this, and I ask this of everybody that's been on my show. Are there any, because you've been involved in so, I mean, you do it so, I guess not as bold and put it out there.
I
But
wish you'd say, well, that would work. Go ahead, I'm sorry. What?
But you do so much charity work and you've done so much through the years. What charitable causes are kind of near and dear to your heart that you'd like the viewers to know about?
Well, my charity work, I'm hoping one day it turns around and comes back to me when I need it most, which could happen at any moment. This interview may create a necessity for some charity work coming this way. It's a gratifying thing. Because if you're lucky enough to be able to help people, helping them is a very gratifying activity. I'm now, oh God, you're never going to be able to use this thing. Anyhow, there's a place in Jamestown, New York, that the entire community has been built on comedy. And a woman, wonderful woman, gorgeous lady, Journey's her name. And she called me one day and said, they're going to do this environment comedy. And she said, do I have anything I could send her of Laugh In? And I said, oh, yes. So I sent her some stuff. And she said, this is great. Do you have anything else? And I said, lady, my warehouse is full of else. I mean, I have hundreds of. So I then started sending her clips and scenes and things of comedy that I'd done. And she then, so I wound up filling up one whole portion of this warehouse. And then I became so involved in it, I started even giving them money. Shh, don't tell people that. But and so now they then, I've given them so much material and also made donations that they named the theater the George Schlatter and Jolene Brand Schlatter Museum Theater. It is.
Oh, wow.
So this big, huge theater in the middle of Jamestown, and the community is devoted entirely to comedians. The only place in the world we have actors, actresses, writers, directors, producers, dancers, everybody, but never anything honoring just the comics. So when Journey told me she was going to do this entire collection, this entire environment, 30 acres or something, all stand-up comics, I fell in love with her and the project. So I've sent her all of our material, and I'm going back there the end of April or August or something. And we're going to have an event that will introduce a book I've written called Still Laughin', which chronicles many of my adventures. I sat down and talked into a microphone and then sent all of these just ranting tapes to John Max, who's a brilliant, brilliant comedy writer. And I said, take anything out of this that could go into a book. So he's put together a book called Still Laughing. And it wasn't all my fault. And so the book is coming out this
When
spring.
does it come out? Do you know?
In April or something. If it's coming, they're going to actually publish it. I said, I can't believe that people are going to, but they think they may get some people to buy it. So
I'm one of them. You can.
All right. Well, I'll send you a
in.
copy, but it's just some page. Some of the chapters are 2-3 pages, and some of them are 10 minutes. You know, it's all just my adventures and my misadventures.
I love it.
And it's all funny episodes. So they're funny to me, and if I'll send you a copy and you tell me what you think.
Please, I'd be honored. What about?
Well, I don't know about honor. Let's see how this interview goes before you start using a word like honored. You know, just mildly acceptable, I'll settle for.
What about? Let me ask you this: you also have a documentary coming out. Am I right?
Yes. We're also bringing in people to just tell stories, and one of them is like Don Rio, who worked for me as a writer, and he started out. He was the only white guy that was working in the theater in New York, right? And what the hell was it anyhow? And so he worked with Slappy White, and so I mean he's going to do a thing, a totally unexpected white guy, right? White literate guy that worked with Slappy White at the Apollo Theater, which was all black, not only black shows but black audience. And Don Rio, we're doing a thing with him. People that are not celebrities as such, but that are very interesting to talk to. So we'll see what happens with that. There's a book coming out, and then these interviews So it's my life, which is filled with unbelievable, unexpected, some of them unacceptable.
All good.
And so we'll see what happens now. You may want to air some of this. I don't blame you if you don't, but
George, you are cracking me up. I will be airing so much of this. This is golden. It's just wonderful hearing your stories. I've enjoyed
I'm not
it
getting
all.
paid for this, am I?
No,
no, because I don't want to take money for something that I'm just enjoying, and that's why I gave up sex anyway.
I'm glad that you've been enjoying it. Thank goodness.
I'm having a good time.
Just to end, I guess, what would you say, I guess, to someone that's coming into the business now? What would you say would be the greatest part of being in this entertainment industry?
Trying to figure a way out. It's a tough bit. It's very gratifying. As I say, the best feeling next to an orgasm is a laugh. I mean, and sometimes in my life I combine the two. But we have to laugh. We have to laugh. As a matter of fact, it's a treatment. They've had people are convinced that if a person is in terminal pain, laughter is very gratifying and it releases a lot of energy.
It does.
So much energy, I may be putting you to sleep. That's how much energy.
But somebody wake me up.
Laughter is something we must cherish. Laughter is something we must promote. Laughter we must enjoy. You go to a play and you see it's a very sad play and you cry. That's not rewarding. You're impressed and you say, boy, what a great performance. Comic, when you hear a comic, it gets a big laugh, you feel euphoric. You feel it's almost orgasmic. And
it's energizing. Yeah.
We should end the interview on that word, right?
Yeah, I will.
The only word in the English language I haven't abused during this long and useless interview we're doing. But it's the best feeling you can have is a big laugh.
I agree. I totally agree. Hey, so George,
he's got a few in here.
George, thank you so much. Sincerely,
wait, before you get very grateful. Take a look at what we're saying to see whether or not you can air any of it.
George, I can air a ton of it, but seriously, thank you so much for being part of this. And I'm going to take you up on that book because I want it for sure.
All right, and send me a copy of this to see if there's any of it that I'll approve of you using. You may be able to use parts of this.
Oh, I can use a lot. I will definitely, though. I definitely will.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much.
We'll see, and I hope you have better luck on your next interview. This I seem to rattle on a bit, but old people do that. They tend to go on and on and on.
I enjoyed it.
When I was younger, I would have cut this off earlier. What?
I really enjoyed talking with you, George, very much. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll do it. Okay, bye-bye. Send me a copy. And then I'll send you an apology.
Please hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so you're notified when I release a new episode of That's Classic. And in case you missed any of the old episodes, go check them out, like Henry Winkler from Happy Days, or Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver, or Judy Norton from The Waltons. There's so many. Enjoy.